How do you stay away from any problems with the IRS? What if you're a business? Any changes coming in 2025? I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau, and this is Joe Knows Better. All right, with me now, David King, CEO and founder of Optima Tax Relief, and Patty Huerta with H&H Business and Tax Consulting. Thanks for being here. All right, let's talk about taxes. We're going to talk about individuals and businesses. But individuals, very interesting, and you help people when they have issues with the IRS in many cases, correct?
Yes, we are kind of a full-service tax firm. But typically we do help those who have fallen behind with their obligation to file or pay the IRS. Okay.
Is that what you typically see when people come to you? What kind of, is there a typical and average situation? I mean, are they basically like, oh man?
Yeah, we're at the tail end of tax administration. So typically someone reaches out to us when the IRS has reached out to them.
Okay. So, and in those cases, is the IRS ready to take action, or is the IRS kind? Do they first say, hey, you may have an issue here, but, let's talk?
I know some of their executives, and if I didn't say they were kind, I'd probably be in trouble. But they are definitely kind if you're engaged. I say the IRS is in a very difficult position because they have to be the hugger of taxpayers and businesses as well, who have an obligation to pay their taxes, as well as the hammer for those folks who don't. So they have to balance that and navigate that difficult line to make sure they get engagement from taxpayers.
Okay, I'm going to get back to a lot of that. Patty, you deal with businesses and business taxes. So do you see people businesses that could be on the road to IRS trouble, or do you get people who are having trouble with the IRS? Or I guess that's your job to try to prevent that.
Exactly. Our job is to prevent that. We work with a lot of small businesses, and what we do, we focus on setting up their entities. And we consult them and coach them. So we don't see a lot of that because we deal with a lot of new businesses. And we mentor them, and what we tell them, it's all about the team. If you do not have the right team, those issues that David just brought up will happen. So it is imperative. Some people come in, oh, how much is it? That's already the wrong mentality. You need to be like, what is your experience? Who's your team? Because it's a team. It's just one tax person. Our network is so wide. We even go internationally. We have connections with Mexico because businesses go back and forth, import and export. You have to have a team. And if you don't, that's where everything begins.
All right. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, then we'll come back. But let's look at 2025. It's coming up. Anything that businesses should be concerned about going for? What should they be doing right now at the end of 20? This is probably going to air at the end of 2024. So what should they be doing to prepare for that?
Well, you know what? We're in a very special month. Month of September is where a lot of companies do open enrollment. And one of the things that I personally I don't understand is why the CFOs and human resources don't go into the goodie bag. And what is the goodie bag? And that's called Section 125. Most people know it as cafeteria plans. All the goodies are in there, and you can use them, but people just don't go there.
The cafeteria plans.
Yeah, cafeteria plans.
Go back to high school.
Yes, that's what they call them.
That's where the goodies are.
Right, that's where you can have, set up 401k plans, your medical. A lot of them have child care, and I heard through the grapevine that IRS is working on a weight loss.
Goodie?
Yes, goodie.
Called Ozempic.
And these
are
free. Right, and these are all plans that you can purchase for the employees pre-tax. So this is a great way to help your company.
Okay, so and that helps businesses because you're able to what?
We're able to help businesses save on payroll, tax savings, and then the employee benefits by getting actual great benefits.
Do you, with businesses and individuals, and again, I know that there are various circumstances, but on
sometimes
average,
they cross over, sometimes it's both.
Do you see people, is it mistakes? Is it knowingly? Is it what? Why do people have trouble with?
It runs a gamut. It could be mistakes from the IRS as well. So that's not only always the individual or business. That's often correct. The IRS make mistakes. And Patty brought up a point with her businesses she represents. And look, beside and the licensing requirement. That is, believe it or not, you can file a return without any licensing requirement in most states here in America.
As a business,
as a tax preparer. So you can actually file a tax return for an individual. You come to me in certain states. In California, there's a CTEC designation, but there's a lot. I participate with the National Association of Enrolled Agents, one of their committees, and one of their kind of pushes that they've been trying to get done through Congress is to have every a requirement for every tax preparer to be licensed, which isn't available right now. You can get a P10 yourself, Joe, by reaching out to the IRS and file a return next week.
Well, let me write that down.
That is correct.
How much can I make off of that?
Well, hopefully not a lot, because you probably wouldn't know what to do, and no one's coming to you to file that return.
I have no clue
So there's a
what's
mistake
going
example.
on.
You brought up mistakes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of preparers out there, and even ghost preparers. You talked
Yes.
about scams potentially. They won't put their name on the return. They won't put their P10 on there, but Joe will come to them to, let's get the biggest refund possible, and he'll walk away with a fat check.
What
and
advice do
worry
you
about it.
give to people then looking for a tax preparer? If they're in a state that doesn't have that requirement?
I'll let Patty take this one.
Well-
She probably knows well.
Business and individual, I guess.
Thank
but
you. I personally think you need to interview. When you're paying someone, you have the right to interview.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, example, do you have a P10? How long have you been in business?
Do you have a P10?
Yes, a P10. A P10 is used to not have to use your own social on the actual paperwork that you're submitting. So
Okay.
a P10 gives you a number to hide your social as the preparer.
Okay.
That's what that's used for.
So ask about that. What else do they ask? What other questions would you think are important to ask?
How long have you been in business? What type of client base do you have? Is it business? Is it individual? So then you begin to hear what's their specialty. What kind of other services do you give? How do you help? We do a lot of services. We're like a one-stop shop. In fact, I don't even say we're tax professionals. We're like, we fix problems. Just come on over and we'll fix problems. And that's just really, it.
To elaborate a little bit more, what Patty said, you can always look at the license, and she said, if you're walking into a laundromat and there's also a tax preparer on the side, probably not the place you want to get your taxes done. And you'll see these things pop up during tax season.
Yeah.
If it's an established office like Patty has here, and you're walking into it, that's not going away tomorrow, right? But good luck finding the preparer who filed your return and gave you that refund and didn't sign it. When the problem occurs, when you have to call Optima 3 years later because you now have this massive, the IRS wants that money back, and then a 20% penalty and all the other penalties and interest that accumulated over the time. So that's the issue that comes up, and that's why ghost preparers, that's what they're called. There needs to be a designation, we think, or I think anyway, for all preparers nationwide.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to say something there. I was going to say I covered a story where there was a tax firm in our area, and they were getting all the deposits or all the refunds. Refunds though deposited into their own accounts.
This happens.
And some of it might have been because I think there are a couple the people, the community they may have been serving, but they weren't getting the money back, and then they were taking it and saying, "Hey, we did work for you that equaled the amount of your refund, so we're going to keep that amount of money." I mean, it was crazy. But there didn't seem to be anybody to go to. It
Even
the IRS
worse,
to come down.
even worse, we see those cases, and those are the ones that IRS will come down. The enforcement will come down and shut them down. And if they're taking their refund, exactly, they'll end up going to jail. Those are the cases you see quite often from CI, criminal investigation, going to IRS, and they'll come in and shut those folks down, and they should. But it's hard to find.
I want to go into, and we're going to get into other things here with remainder time, but I do want to hit on again, we go over a little bit of this, but the things people and businesses can do to kind of avoid these issues. You said it's important to have a team, to have the bookkeeping, to have that happening all the time, not just kind of willy-nilly, I guess is what you're saying, right? So that's important for businesses. For individuals, I guess something similar. Your receipts,
always
keeping all the proof that you have. How long do you keep your taxes?
3 years.
3 years is the obligation. Many people keep them more or less. We find they don't have anything. But people will call us that haven't filed for 10 years sometimes. Believe it or not, this happens. And we have to put all their filings together. And so we'll use transcripts from the IRS and prepare returns off those. And the documentation they have, we'll try to put together the model for them.
Do you see, what are some common, I know I'm going to this 10 different ways, but the common problems that you think people, individuals, are involved with? What are they doing that is not, they shouldn't be doing? And maybe what should they be doing? Like what gets them in trouble? I know the bookkeeping and all, but just is there any particular thing? Do they, if they have a rental property, do they not do things properly there? Is that not really what you're seeing?
The tax code, as you know, is extremely complex. So it could fill up this room with paperwork if we tried to look at every single one. So there's many things that could happen. But the most common thing that we see, again, we're at the tail end of tax administration. We fix all the messiest of the messiest problems. When they've neglected, and that's the key word, if you neglect your tax obligation, your civic duty to file a return as an American and pay, or at least get an arrangement set up with the IRS, that's the biggest mistake you can make. Then that hammer I referenced earlier from the IRS is going to come out. and it's help because your bank's been levied, your bank has been levied.
So people just neglecting altogether. That's the most.
Is the number one thing. Yes.
Okay. Anything else that they're doing that they're not thinking properly? They're writing off a mortgage interest, but they're writing off the whole mortgage, or the instead of just the interest, or those kinds of things. Does that even get them in trouble, or is that not the trouble we're talking about?
Patty will see that often with her book, and the bookkeeping reference is one as well. She probably sees messes all the time. She has to clean up.
Yes, I don't see much of that. One thing that we do see a lot, and this is what really is getting a lot of people in trouble, and I know that a lot of it is going back to who's coaching them, is the misclassification of the workers. Where they're really W-2s and they put them as 1099s, and that will bring you massive problems. And I exactly. But what I tell people, what's even worse than getting in trouble, because you can cut a check, pay the penalties. That's not the worst part. The worst part is that you're always on the radar now. It's like a bad kid. Now they got to babysit you all the time because you're always doing bad things.
What do the IRS what do they concentrate on? What do they look at? What are some things I want to concentrate on some individuals, because we have a lot of individuals listening to this. Are there some things that they look at that maybe shouldn't, that are kind of the big areas they concentrate on?
Well, they're always looking for fraud, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not unreporting income is the number one reason for the tax gap. That the IRS comes out and says that the tax gap is the amount that should be paid to the IRS, the amount that should be owed and paid, and versus the amount that's actually reported and paid or not. The gap is between the amount that the IRS says this is what we'd love to be able to collect. This is why the IRA funding, you give us X amount of billions of dollars, where hopefully we'll chip into that tax gap and help the America stay funded.
Okay.
So these
so
types of things.
That's what about so how does the IRS, little things like, and I've got notices I think from the IRS before actually about interest that I forgot to report, I think it was.
Correct.
And then there was something, and then I brought up the interest where I really didn't mean to, but I wrote off the mortgage. No, I think I had refinanced over a period of time, and I could only write off the interest on the first original mortgage, I think it was, instead of all of it that from these various places. Those are those are kind of minor things. Will the IRS kind of work with you on those things?
Absolutely.
When do they come after you?
It's just more, I think, more going back to these, like the unpaid payroll taxes, the misclassification of workers, the overstating deductions. A big one that I see is mixing business and personal expenses. That's called commingling.
Stuff there, yep.
It goes back to
business and personal expenses.
Yes, they're commingling. They don't mean to, but those bring on legal issues. It's money issues. It's not good.
Yeah, as far as what you mentioned, and good point there on the bookkeeping. When you mentioned it earlier, I thought that's what you're going to see a lot of. The personal expenses run through the business. Using the same bank account, that's just an episode for disaster. They can't keep, most folks who have a business are worried about running their business. And so they're not thinking about the bookkeeping side of it, that they should, because it's a mess for Patty to clean up and sometimes us.
Yeah.
Because they've used some of those expenses and applied them to the business and to reduce their tax obligation. So that's how the IRS finds out is they audit, and that's the number one thing they can do. And they'll use algorithms. If I knew that algorithm, I'd probably be.
We want to know.
I wouldn't
right now.
be here. I'd be retired somewhere. But but that algorithm's always changing, and the IRS is getting better about using, believe it or not, AI and
to spot certain things that are. Okay, that's what I was kind of looking at. Where are those?
Yes.
One of the big areas that they're looking at right now is the overstating mileage. I think that's a big targeted area that IRS is going to target.
Okay.
And I just think it goes back to, again, education on using logbooks and how to just log your miles and being showed how to do it.
And that's something both individuals and businesses would have concerns
we
about.
work with a lot of sole props. Yeah. Sole props don't usually go and get guidance.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not an entity.
There's some easier ways to get flagged. You're right, Patty. Mileage is one. There's even apps out there to help you track. I mean, again, if you're a trucker, we do a lot of truckers.
Yeah.
They're 1099 often. They're independent contractors. They have a shoebox in the back. They're throwing stuff back there. They're McDonald's, whatever it is. They're gas. They're not the best bookkeepers, and they're asked to do this while on the road. Good luck. It's a episode for disasters often.
Yeah.
So we have to fix a mess going back. The IRS will look at it realistically, though. I mean, they understand if you're a trucker, you're going to have gas, and you're going to be driving. You're going to have mileage, right? But if you're taking excess mileage, they're going to look at that. If another one for, you mentioned your businesses, if they're working from home, a home office expense is an easy way to get flagged. That's another big one that is a big flag area that you can get flagged.
Part of your house, how big a part of the house you can use. All that's important.
Another area to get flagged on the return side or on the preparation side as well.
Okay. All right. I'm really fascinated with the IRS.
We all are.
And the
We're trying to
messes
figure
that
this
you-
out, right? 'Cause no one wants to pay the tax, but they have to, right?
And you know
And-
what's so funny, Joe, is that a lot of people just think of the IRS, but I think I have more respect for the franchise. Franchise is a whole different.
Yeah.
Franchise
California.
board.
Yeah.
Franchise tax board
Okay.
in California.
All right. Well, let me ask you about you've seen some messes you've said clear. But how willing is the IRS to work? Do they have a cut and dry system, or are there things that you can go to them and say, "Hey, this is a different situation because."
Yes.
I just wonder.
The revenue officers, the field officers have more autonomy. I call them judge and jury. That's one person. And the good thing about a revenue officer is they have tax knowledge. They can understand some of the tax bases. The bad thing about IRS officers, as far as looking for a deal, is that they have tax knowledge. They know it works both ways. So you're not going to pull the wool over there. They're going to know what's happening there. They're going to know you have a Ferrari parked in your driveway. If you're saying you have a hardship, that's not going to fly. As far as working with the buildings of the IRS, where the majority of the staff works, the collection service, the automated collection service, where you're dealing with, that's where the thousands of folks answer the phones. A typical person would deal with them on the collection side. They might not know you have that Ferrari parked in the driveway. So a hardship might be easier if you haven't fallen all the way to a revenue officer, which is only the most extreme cases.
The revenue officer.
There's about 2,500 to 3,000.
So you don't want the revenue officer. That's
No, you
nobody
do
in
not.
trouble.
That means you're in bigger trouble.
Okay.
Usually a higher threshold in debt or payroll taxes, like I mentioned before.
In most cases, do they work out some kind of plan with you, payment plan, and then?
Yeah, they have so many cases looking to get on to the next one. So as long as you're able to pay, they're going to work with you on your collectability. That's the first thing they're going to establish. I mean, if you really have a hardship, if something happened last month and you're disabled or whatever it may be, of course they're going to take that into consideration. How can they? It's like squeezing water out of a rock. You're not going to get it. So they understand that and put a deal together for you.
Yeah.
Another area that I think needs an enormous amount of help is the fact is that a lot of the business owners nowadays are Latinos, and it's Spanish language. There is no professionals that are, and this is one of the things that I say out loud too, as Latinos, we need to up our game as professionals because they need our help. And if we don't up our game, then they have nowhere to go.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're getting down there, guys. That went fast. Some last minute. We'll go over some of the points one more time. We'll go over quickly. So, bookkeeping, personnel, bookkeeping, important. Receipts, all the proof that you've had for business or the team. The team's important. Mileage, concerning. Make sure that you're accurate on your mileage if that's part of it. What else do we talk about?
And I want to do my shameless pitch.
Yes.
I partnered up with 125 Managed Health, and we focus on two things: providing payroll tax advantages to companies while implementing benefits for the employees. And one of the biggest things that we have, it has different things within it, but we have a mental health in the workforce, healthcare. We have discounts on labs. No co-payment is zero cost to employers.
Okay. They have to pay for that ad now.
Okay.
Yeah, apart from that cost.
That's how we work.
Patty, we're going to send you a bill after this. But no, great points, Patty. And as far as we are concerned, from an Optima standpoint, we don't want people to have to call us. We shouldn't. I always tell the IRS, we shouldn't be in business, but we are because there are a lot of people. There's a void, right? It's either from the IRS side or like Patty said, taxpayers can't find reputable help. Hopefully they're finding people like Patty before they come to us to have to fix these incredible messes that we have to fix. And of course, we'd love doing it. That's what we do, but we'd rather they avoid it. And the one thing that my tax attorney will get mad if I don't tell the audience today is that do something. The last thing you want to do is ignore your tax obligation, and engaging with the IRS is always a better course.
Okay. That's great. And you're both accredited businesses with the Better Business Bureau, trustworthy businesses. And I'd say to everybody to look for the bbb.org, to look for those businesses in your industries to make sure that they've taken that step. So that's great. All right. Great conversation. Thank you, guys. David King, CEO and founder of Optima Tax Relief, and Patty Huerta, H&H Business and Tax Consulting. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, pleasure. Thank you for having me, Joe.
Before hiring, go to bbb.org, check reviews, and for accredited businesses that agree to operate ethically. And see all my podcasted videos, joeknowsbetter.bbbcommunity.org.
I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau, helping businesses and consumers get it right.